this is Riding with Ree, and for today's video I'm going to talk about the wish list I had for the horse I wanted to buy versus the horse that I actually bought, and we can see whether the two actually matched up. So it was about almost to the day this time last year that I first put a post up on my personal Facebook to friends and family saying I'm starting to look for a horse and here are the things that I'm really after, and I thought it would be really interesting to break down that wish list and the concept of a wish list in general, and then talk about what I actually ended up buying and why, if it's useful for those who are looking for their first horse or their next horse. If you are new to the channel, I'm Ree and I have a 6-year-old Irish Draught who I bought in October of last year. He turned 6 in May this year, and I've shared everything from sharing and part loaning to buying my first horse to now having my first young horse. So if there's anything else you want to know, let me know in the comments and I can put it down as a video. But I'm going to first dive into my advert that I put to friends and family, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the concept of a wish list itself. This was July the 5th, 2023. Horsey friends, after the devastating loss of my gorgeous horse Woody in March, I'm gently beginning the process of looking for an equine partner. I would rather buy privately, and word of mouth can be helpful, so sharing in case anybody knows of anything coming up. My wish list, and yes, I know it's a wish list, is geldings only, 5 to 10 years old, 15.3 to 16.3, no full TBs, thoroughbreds, personal preference, ISH, Irish Sport Horse, ID, which is Irish Draught, Cob, etc. Must hack and travel alone. For RC activities, which is riding club activities, fun rides, etc. and BD, which is British dressage. Must be a nice person on the ground. If they love a fuss and a pamper, I am the right home. Must be open to 5-stage vet and x-rays. A wonderful home awaits on a calm professional livery yard in Surrey. Weekly coaching, professional rider support if needed, 365 turnout, varied work, and a sympathetic owner who loves a cuddle. This horse will want for nothing and will be one I hope is with me for life. Based in Surrey, South East. So before I dive into each individual thing on the wish list, I want to talk about the concept of why a wish list is helpful or why people choose to make them. And actually they can be a little bit contentious. So a wish list is something that my coach introduced me to, and it's essentially a set of criteria of things that you want in your next horse or your first horse. And the reason that we put together wish lists is so that we have something to go off, that we can narrow the pool of all of the horses out there and start to see first what's available within our budget, but also because it can take a long time to find the right horse, and when we start to get frustrated about not being able to find them, we can start to waver and be like, oh, I'm just going to start looking outside of the things I was looking for before. And horses are such a big expensive purchase, and finding the right horse for you is such a difficult thing that not having a wish list means that you could end up buying a horse that isn't right for you because you were rushing because you wanted to buy a horse, and then you end up with the wrong horse and you either have to sell them on or you have to try and work through those issues. So the concept of a wish list is to give you kind of a something to go off, a target to go after, and also to really narrow down what it is that you're looking for. The reason that they can be contentious to some people is that people say that you cut yourselves off from horses that can be really, really great for you because you have such a strong wish list. I feel differently about them. I think my approach is kind of nuanced. I don't disagree that sometimes the right horse is out there and you can't find something that ticks all of your boxes, but I think there are things that you should know what you can and can't compromise on from a comfortability, a safety and a preference point of view. So now I'm going to dive into each of the individual points and talk about why I chose that as a thing on my wish list. So first one is geldings only, which I know is really a contentious thing to have on a wish list. There are people out there, of course, who are like, it doesn't matter if you have a mare or a gelding, you shouldn't look based on gender. There are also people who are like, I only buy mares, and there are people who are like, I only buy geldings. For me, there was a couple of reasons why I only wanted a gelding. One of them is just familiarity. My last horse was a gelding, my loan horse before that was a gelding, horses I've shared have been geldings, horses I've ridden on a hunt yard, they were all geldings pretty much. So part of it's like I just know them really well. The second part is that technically when you have a mare, they are entire, they have a whole reproductive system, whereas a gelding doesn't, they've been gelded. And so what tends to happen, I find personally, is that geldings are more consistent. You get the same horse that comes out of the stable each time. whereas mares can be a little bit different based on their hormonal cycles. And the other thing is that mares are in season between, I believe it's April to October, which is when I wanted to do most of my activities as a kind of riding club owner. And sometimes those hormone cycles can be a little bit disruptive. And I also don't want to perpetuate the whole moody mare myth. But in my experience, I looked around at the mares that I knew, and that apart from one, every single mare that I knew, I was like, I just wouldn't want to own them. I find that geldings are more, cuddly, consistent. The way you ride a gelding, I think, can be slightly different. So that was sort of my point of view. I know that people say if you get a mare on side, you'll have her for life, and I don't disagree with that, because I see people who have amazing relationships with mares. But for me, it was like, it's a gelding, has to be a gelding. And I nearly wavered on that. I nearly wavered, and then I was like, no, I know I want a gelding. The next was 5 to 10 years old, which I don't think is a massively unusual age bracket to have. 5 was the youngest at the youngest end that we were ever going to look at. 4 felt like too early, like a 4-year-old we needed something that had been produced a little bit. For me, ultimately I'm an amateur rider. I'm not, I don't even know if you'd say amateur. I'm not a novice, but I'm certainly not a professional. And having a 4-year-old, I think sometimes it can be better to have something that's been a bit more produced. So 5 was the minimum. 10 was the top age bracket. Woody was 10 when I lost him, actually, not when I bought him. He was 9 when I bought him, but or was he 8? He might have been 8. But 10 is like, I think they've had some life experience, they know what their job is, they're in their sort of prime. Above 10, they're starting to get into their teenage years, and they can come with a bit more either habits or wear and tear on their body, depending on how they've been looked after. You have less time with them, ultimately, from where the end of their sort of retirement age would be if they're healthy throughout their life. So again, slightly arbitrary, but it felt right for me. I think they're the most expensive. A lot of people want like a solid 7 or 8-year-old, and I knew that. I went in knowing that. And when it came to the 5-year-old thing, I knew that I would never buy a 5-year-old without having a coach who could help me coach me on them weekly, who could ride them if I needed that support, who would help look after them, sort of holistic 360 sense. Like, she's the yard owner, so she helps with feed, turnout, routine, everything. And that was really important to me when looking at younger horses. The other thing that was really important is we were like, if it is a 5-year-old, they have to have the right temperament. They have to have they have to be forgiving, because a rider like myself who is okay but like not a professional, like if we lose our balance or we do something wrong in the moment, we need a horse that will be able to accept that and be forgiving in nature. And some horses can't, they're too sensitive, they need a much quieter rider, for example. And I'm not saying that you should ever be like, oh, I'm just going to be a really bad rider forever. We are all striving to be better all the time, but I think it's really important to understand where your limitations as a rider are, and understand then that you need a horse that will be able to accept that with you. And when it came to Harley, as a 5-year-old, he was actually pretty more established in his jumping, because he was being produced by a show jumper than he was in his flat work. And I remember having a conversation with my coach about it, and I was like, well, I don't mind working on the flat work. I love the flat work. I'm confident in that. I have you to help me in that. Whereas the jumping, I wanted a horse that maybe had more professional help in that area. So we ended up working a lot on the flat work in the first 6, 7, 8 months, and we've just started doing jumping now. And so he had that lovely forgiving nature and was fine. Next was height, so 15.3 to 16.3. And again, this was like thinking about the fact that I'm about between 5'6" and 5'7", and I weigh about 85 kilograms, I think. So I needed a horse that would be able to manage my height and my weight. And so I was looking at stockier breeds anyway, Cobs, Irish Draughts, Irish Sports with more sort of Irish Draught blood. 15.3, I tried a couple, but I found that they had quite a short stride. They felt more ponyish, and again, it was kind of a preferential thing. I prefer a little bit of a bigger stride, but then you get to the other end of the spectrum, and if you're looking at a 17 hand, 17.1, 17.2, they're beautiful, but the taller they are, the longer they are, as my coach would say, and that is more difficult for doing dressage and jumping, because you're trying to keep together a longer horse. It also means there's more challenges when it comes to travelling the horse, because you often can't fit these big horses in smaller lorries. They often come with more maintenance as well, so they often eat more. They often need more care taken of their joints because they're just bigger as they get older. And there was also the consideration that if I was looking at, say, a 5-year-old who was 16.3, well, that's fine, but how big are they going to grow? So I remember trying a really nice Irish Draught who was 16.3 at 5 years old, and he was lovely, but we were just, there was a couple of things, and one of them was like, how big is he going to grow? And then there were a couple of other sort of bits and pieces to his ad that we were like not sure about. But yeah, so it was a balance. So Harley, if you're keeping track, is a gelding, tick. He is 5 years old, tick, and he's 16 hands, or he was when I bought him. He might be. I think he's nearly 16.1 now, but he's mostly sort of chunked out or fleshed out. I don't know if that's the right phrase. So the next was no full TBs, personal preference, Irish Draught, Irish Sport, Cob, etc. So again, breeding is really personal preference. Woody was an Irish Sport horse. I had worked a lot with Irish Draughts when I was younger, when I worked on a livery yard, so I was really comfortable with that breed. I love a stockier breed. As I said, I'm slightly curvier myself, and I really like stocky horses. I've always sort of ridden bigger horses. So Cobs, Irish Draughts, Irish Sport, I was very comfortable with all of those. Thoroughbreds, I just don't like the feeling of a more slender horse. I get worried about the weight ratio for myself, like the 20% ratio. I also think every breed has this, but I think thoroughbreds do have common ailments that come with their breeding, and that wasn't really something that I wanted to go after. Irish Draughts have the same thing, by the way. I'm not all over thoroughbreds. Irish Draughts have things that mean that they also have challenges based on their breeding, but I was like, if it's going to be one or the other, I prefer the feel of a stockier horse. And I also think that Irish Draughts have a lovely balance of athleticism. They are known as horses who will like turn their hooves to anything. They're smart, but they're also very forgiving. They tend to be really level-headed, so you've got a really nice balance there, and it was sort of what I wanted. And when we looked at Harley in particular, he had that level-headedness, he was smart, he really wanted to work, he was forgiving, but he also had these really lovely natural paces that we really liked, and the way he jumped was really lovely. So the next was must hack and travel alone. This was just preference, but I hack and travel on my own quite a lot, as you will have seen from the channel maybe. It wasn't so much like, oh, they've never hacked alone, we don't know what they'd be like. That's sort of different, but if you know you've got a horse that doesn't like hacking alone, you can work through it. But I think horses that don't like being on their own, it may always be in the back of their mind. Don't know. Same with travelling, it depends how old they are, but I wanted something that hadn't got a problem in that area, and Harley sort of ticked those boxes. The next was for RC activities, fun rides, etc. and BD. So you might see this on adverts as like, oh, it would be a great riding club all-rounder. What that means basically is somebody who like does a lot of different things. So they do a bit of dressage, they do fun rides, they do pole clinics, they do jump clinics, they might go and do a little one-day event. They need a horse that is versatile enough to turn their hooves to all of those different things, and so that's why I put that in the advert. And then the BD was in there specifically because I wanted a horse that had the paces, not to do like really high level BD, but just like low level stuff, because I love the dressage, which is again what we got in Harley. Before I bought him, I don't know if he'd done fun riding, but he'd been hacking, he'd done sort of clinics, and he had been out show jumping, so he'd done a bit of, we knew he'd kind of been out and seen the world a little bit. And then I just put, must be a nice person on the ground. If they love a fuss and pamper, I'm the right home. So this phrase, nice person on the ground, comes up in horsey adverts, and I'd seen a couple of ads where the horse would have been perfect for me, but they were a bit like grumpy on the ground. And that basically, again, just comes down to the fact that the ownership for me is so much more than the riding. I love grooming my horses, I love like pampering them, not to the point where I'm being annoying, but that is part of the experience for me. And like Harley is just wonderful in that regard. Like I can get him ready myself, I can take him to an event. I mean, if you saw the recent vlog where we went to arena hire, I took him myself, I tacked him up myself, I did all the things, and he was just lovely. And that is just important to me as part of the experience. And I think when you are spending a bit more and you're buying, you know, buying a horse is a big purchase, then you can afford to be a bit sort of pickier in that sense. But I also have heard people say, well, my horse was shy and then he came out of his shell, and I think that's fine. I was more talking about horses that really don't want to engage with you on the ground. I think also that can be a sign of other things going on, so I just tend to avoid it. And then finally, must be open to 5-stage vet and x-rays. Goes without saying, after Woody, my paranoia level was so high, and I actually kind of x-rayed, I think I x-rayed basically everything on Harley. And so, I mean, I think it's a bit of a red flag anyway if someone doesn't let you vet their horse, but for me, I was like, I just wanted people to know from the off that I was going to vet and I was going to x-ray like everything. because it just saves the conversation down the line if people don't want you to. I'm really keen to hear like what's on your wish list, or what was on your wish list and what did you end up buying. I'm sure there are going to be people out there who are like, oh yeah, I didn't buy anything that was on my wish list and they're my perfect horse, and I think that's great. I think if you know me well enough by now, I'm a Virgo by design. I like everything to be very planned and proper and prim and whatever. And so yeah, it worked out for me, but I thought that might be useful. I thought I might do a few of these videos in the run up to our anniversary of 1 year together of buying a young horse. So I might do one on maybe the viewing, etc. So yeah, stay tuned, and may do a vlog soon too. I know that people love the vlogs of me and Harley. I just haven't got around to doing one lately, so hopefully I will. And yeah, I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.